Down here you see different supplements and or drugs, fan blowing on his face, mouses, etc. When you zoom in, you see this and this, and it is apparently this. What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're talking about Sam Bankman-Fried and his nootropic use, his drug use, his cognitive enhancing, dopaminergic enhancing drugs that he's using to stay cognitively fucking dialed, dude, for being the hyper-productive entrepreneur that he is, bro. So if you haven't seen, I'm sure you've probably seen if you're clicking this, the FTX debacle. He's all in the news and has been for a minute now. Crypto fears contagion as billions owed to creditors. Sam Bankman-Fried becomes an ESG truth teller. FTX fires 3 of Sam Bankman-Fried's top deputies. Celebs like Tom Brady, Larry David did ads for crypto giant FTX. Now they're getting sued. Sam Bankman-Fried says fuck regulators. Musk's Twitter ultimatum and making TikToks instead of ads. This is Matt Levine on the collapse of Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX and Alameda. So apparently this guy went from a billionaire to nothing essentially overnight from this complete disaster of a situation. If you want some insight onto exactly what happened, check out CoffeeZilla. High quality information on a regular basis in a highly entertaining format. Highly recommend his channel for anything crypto scam related essentially, or anything financial scam related or like guru scam related, anything like that. Super entertaining, high production value channel. Now, what I'm talking about specifically is the nootropic use. This was a tweet that I got tagged in quite a few times. Extra confirmed, the stimulant patch that Sam preferred was EMSAM, a drug normally used to treat depression or Parkinson's, but used off-label for its alertness and focus benefits. So you have this picture here of him at his computer doing his thing, and down here you see different supplements and or drugs, fan blowing on his face, mouses, etc. When you zoom in, you see this and this, and it is apparently this Salicyline transdermal system. 9 milligrams per 24 hours. This is a transdermal that is prescription grade and is otherwise used to essentially enhance low-grade perpetual dopaminergic activity through inhibiting monoamine oxidase. It is a selective inhibitor. So we're going to get into that shortly. I'm going to read through some of these tweets. We've been reached out to and told the EMSAM can be dangerous when taken if you eat the wrong foods. Please do not take this without appropriate supervision. Commenters point out that salicyline has fatal effects if eaten with meat products. They also point out that it is linked to impulse control disorders such as pathological gambling and hypersexuality. This could explain Sam's behavior. The Erowid drug information reviews on EMSAM, however you want to say it, are particularly interesting. This one stands out. First off, I'm a 19-year-old male, about 170 pounds, who's experimenting with nootropics out of curiosity. A few months ago, I ordered a bottle of 60 doses of 5 milligrams salicyline from a research chemical site and took it pretty much every day. The day I started taking it, I noticed a marked increase in motivation. For me, it was money, but there was a huge desire for me to make as much money as possible. I've never been a material person at all. And although I had money, I never thought about doing anything with it other than spending it. I guess some might say that being possessed by money is a bad thing, but the feeling is nothing short of complete empowerment. I love doing math problems in my head involving money. The thinking was so clear. I went from having a bit under $500 in the bank to over $10,000 in 2 months that I had taken it. Of course, I can't quite disclose how I made this money. I have to say that I engaged in activities that I probably wouldn't have without salicyline. Next one. Of course, that isn't the only feeling I noticed on salicyline. I was motivated to use better vocabulary while speaking to people. I used to be pretty goofy and not many people really took me seriously. Now when I talk, I feel that people listen. There's a noticeable increase in the strength of my voice. I would say that I probably had low self-confidence before taking salicyline. Now, when I word things, it is not in the may I form, it's I will. It makes me tend to look down on most people, but not in such a way that it would affect friendships, although a few friends mentioned to me that I had changed because of my general mindset. This probably sounds incredibly cocky, but it's true confidence. I'm still nice to people. It's just that they now seem to look up to me. Another benefit is the emotional numbing. Before salicyline, I would jump at any chance with a decent looking girl and become attached pretty quickly in a flurry of emotions. On it, my something is completely, what the fuck is he saying here? I can't even read it because it's like arrows over it. My thinking, I don't know, I can't even read it. It's completely rational. Emotions never affect my thinking. I'm not even looking for a girlfriend until one can rationally show me that she is really worthy. Girls love to play the game, to say the least. I'm calmer without emotional outbursts. When I get upset with people, I simply use my enhanced charisma to undermine them rather than losing control. So a pretty, I don't know, endorsing testimonial, I guess. But anyways, exactly why would you be using this? A couple other comments. For what it's worth, it's not a stimulant that would make you lose touch with reality or impair judgment. Too much Adderall or Ritalin can do that, but not selegiline. Wait, for real? EMSAM is transdermal selegiline, part of a class of drugs known to decrease impulse control, blah, blah, blah. So selegiline is a selective and irreversible inhibitor of monoamine oxidase B, which means if it's a suicidal inhibitor, basically you are not going to competitively displace it necessarily. You are going to, like, once it is bound, you're going to have to essentially wait for complete degradation of the enzyme and onboarding of new enzymes in order to achieve monoamine oxidase degradation again via that enzyme. Like, you're not going to have dissociation from the enzyme and then have it work again. Rather, you have to literally have destruction of it before you can then onboard new enzymes to then allow you to break down neurotransmitters that are broken down by monoamine oxidase B again. So this is kind of like the aromatase inhibitor discussion, where you have like exemestane, aromacin, you have anastrozole, arimidex, letrozole, Femara. Like, there are certain drugs that their actual potency isn't the only thing that dictates how potent it is, but also the effect it has as a suicidal or a not suicidal inhibitor. Like, are you going to literally stay attached to the enzyme until destruction, or are you going to disassociate from the enzyme and allow it to then, you know, work again and do what it was supposed to do upon metabolism of the drug? So when it is a irreversible inhibitor, it is not going to then allow subsequent activity of that enzyme ever again, essentially. So at least that is my understanding of it. So for monoamine oxidase B inhibition, you are essentially targeting the breakdown of phenethylamines and dopamine to some extent. Like, there is different subtypes of monoamine oxidase enzymes. There's monoamine oxidase A, monoamine oxidase B, and the selectivity of them is going to determine like what you are exactly inhibiting the breakdown of. So with monoamine oxidase A, you are going to be getting more, like, I think it's equally distributed between its breakdown of dopamine, or at least that's what is suggested. There is some literature that suggests that A might actually be more impactful on dopamine deamination, but for phenethylamine, I believe it is proportionally significantly more inhibited or significantly more deaminated by monoamine oxidase B. So the idea behind using it would be mainly to achieve a low grade, like, perpetual bleed of enhanced dopaminergic and potentially like some CNS stimulating activity that would otherwise make work more pleasurable, fun, I don't know, make you more goal-oriented, make you more driven, motivated, make effort feel good, essentially. One of the, I don't know, taglines from Huberman relating to dopaminergic activity and hormone interactions and whatnot. I believe that line was actually more so in relation to testosterone levels, but ultimately this dopaminergic drive and the enhanced inhibition of breakdown, it's not enhanced, but the inhibition of the breakdown of phenethylamine and its metabolite subsequent to that is going to achieve a level of heightened, you know, neurotransmitter circulation that is like otherwise higher than would have otherwise been there if the monoamine oxidase B was actually deaminating these things adequately, which it's no longer able to do because of this level of inhibition selectively at the MOB enzyme. And leaving MOA alone at low enough dosages is the ideal scenario to limit the kind of like dietary contraindications that would otherwise come. And when you have MAOA inhibition, you are starting to really heavily affect the breakdown of things like serotonin, norepinephrine, etc. So having like this selective monoamine oxidase B inhibition, you can achieve, and especially through transdermal delivery, you skip first pass metabolism, which otherwise would have more of an effect on MAOA and be problematic for some of the dietary constrictions that you would otherwise have to be careful of, like the cheese effect is often referred to, which is something that is likely not going to be as problematic or problematic at all at a reasonable dose. Like, he has supposedly a 9 milligram for 24-hour release patch here for transdermal use only. skipping first pass, getting into systemic circulation and skipping the metabolites that would be developed through that first pass metabolism process. And as you see here, bioavailability is only 10% orally, whereas 73% with patch. So you're achieving a higher level of bioavailability, but more specifically, you're getting a more ideal proportion of the actual active drug that you were trying to get into the bloodstream without, like, some of these drugs oftentimes will work and behave quite a bit differently when you take them orally versus transdermally because of the proportion of metabolites that are spit out during the first pass effect. So for this drug in particular, he gets like perpetual 24-hour like low-grade activity with high selectivity for MAOB, high level of actual, like brain activity where it's crossing the blood-brain barrier and doing what it's supposed to be doing without the other side effects or as significant of side effects that could otherwise be present if you were using like a high oral dose or using a non-selective inhibitor, etc. So is it as intense as something like an Adderall or a Ritalin or some of these things that are going to be very, very potent releasers of like dopamine, actual adrenaline and adrenergic activity? Not necessarily. It's more of like a low-grade effect, but it is a potent drug nonetheless. And it is, again, like a less commonly deployed one in the nootropic, like smart drug realm, but it is something that came to the forefront more so after the Limitless hype kind of, well, maybe it was around, and heavily used before that anyways, but I mean, I think the Limitless movie really brought to the forefront the utility and attractiveness potentially of certain nootropic agents that make it seem like you can enhance your cognitive state to like some level of a hyper achieving entrepreneur if you weren't previously, which, yeah, like brain chemistry can be altered pharmacologically to be more congruent to, I don't know, successful endeavors. But I mean, ultimately, some of it is just going to boil down to like just fucking getting down and working too. And as far as the dose, it loses selectivity, by the way. This is in larger doses, more than 20 milligrams a day. It loses specificity for MAOB and also inhibits MAOA, which increases serotonin and norepinephrine levels in the brain. And then that's where you get more into the realm of, the cheese effect and serotonin syndrome and some of these like problematic issues that you have to be more cognizant of. So he is very much, from what I see, to be using like a relatively, I don't know, lower risk approach that is more suited towards getting the actual tailored effects that you'd be looking for from a selectivity aspect and achieving some level of enhanced dopaminergic drive that he may otherwise have not been able to get at baseline or through oral administration. Perhaps he didn't respond well, or, he's just seems pretty like fucking in tune with what he wants if he was to go this route, because this is not a common way of administering drugs, going the transdermal route. This is more of like a niche, like, again, it's literally prescribed, but it's not like you have to dig to learn why you would want to do this over pop a pill, because it's not that fun to wear a fucking patch on your chest all day or something when you could just pop a pill. Like, he is reasonably well-versed and educated about why this is a better way, presumably. So anyways, that is my stance on it. As far as phenethylamines and my stance on them, like, I wouldn't be using something like this personally. I would probably be using something that's more like acute, that I could control the outcome of in a short-term setting, get it in and out of my system, achieve the outcome I'm trying to get, and then get it out, rather than have like low-grade perpetual activity, which is why I'm not like a huge fan of some of these really long half-life drugs. And especially suicidal inhibitors like selegiline, the half-life transdermally is 25 hours. So that means it is going to not just be active in your system for 5+ days for full clearance of the drug, essentially, but in addition to that, the actual irreversible reversal of that and like getting more enzymes on board that can then deaminate, phenethylamine, dopamine adequately. That's going to be multiple more days above and beyond the actual clearance of the drug itself. So this isn't something that is just representative of, within like a week, you are going to get the drug out of your system and you're back to baseline. Like, you have to actually onboard more MAOB at that point in order to get the actual baseline homeostasis back to where it was before from a neurotransmitter deamination perspective. So for me, if I'm achieving like a short-term outcome with phenethylamines and dopamine in particular, one compound I like that is still available is N-Phenethyl dimethylamine citrate. So this is a compound that is based off of the chemical backbone of phenethylamines. The orally ingested phenethylamine has a half-life of like 5 to 10 minutes, so it's something you couldn't even be using anyways. orally, unless you use an MAO inhibitor like a hordenine or a selegiline, for example. But again, like I don't want to be mixing those two in general. And hordenine is kind of like a not FDA approved product now. Like they don't like it very much. And selegiline, like I said, for the reasons I mentioned, it's not, I'm not a huge fan. This is why I like N-Phenethyl dimethylamine citrate. It lasts longer than PEA. It has 2 methyl groups connected to the nitrogen in the molecule, which acts as a safeguard to prevent it from being broken down by MAO as quickly as PEA. It doesn't require an MAO inhibitor to be stacked with it. And it lasts for the duration. Like typically this is something I would use before like a intense workout that otherwise I find like cognitively draining. Like sometimes in the middle of a hard leg day, it can get tough when you're grinding out like heavy compound movements and then you get to some of the more isolation work and you're just fucking dead. So for me, like this is typically where I'd, like in a pre-workout setting, I kind of like N-Phenethyl dimethylamine citrate personally. So the nitrogen atom in PEA is known as the amine and needs to be protected from MAO in order to prolong its effects in the brain. And as you can see, there's nothing attaching to the nitrogen atom to protect it being cleaved by the MAO enzyme. So this is where the chemical structure of N-Phenethyl dimethylamine citrate becomes more advantageous. The 2 methyl groups attached to the nitrogen atom prevent monoamine oxidase from cleaving the amine as quickly, consequently increasing the duration of its cognitive enhancing effects for the majority of a workout, I found. And I find in conjunction with caffeine, it's very, very cognitively stimulating, but I can get it in and out of my system fast enough to have a high level of control over the dopaminergic activity that comes as a result of it, which I like personally better. Like even if I was to use like an Adderall, for example, like I would never be using XR. Ideally, I would be using an instant release that is shorter in your system faster. You can control the actual like pharmacokinetic profile in a more optimal manner rather than having it like bleeding through your system, like fucking up your sleep into the night, etc. So that's kind of my perspective on it. Like I'm not a huge fan of like really long half-life, long effect, bleeding effects into the next day or weeks compounds that are going to be harder to manage. So if you have like a problematic issue, trying to remove that issue from your brain is like a multi-week process, like not ideal in my opinion. So anyways, it's not that crazy of a drug necessarily, like in comparison to some of the shit people are doing, like mega dosing fucking Adderall nowadays, but it is a very potent drug nonetheless and certainly has its own side effect profile that is unique and requires like a fairly reasonable understanding and education around like how it works, why certain dietary restrictions may need to be implemented, etc. So anyways, and why certain drugs shouldn't be used with it, like stacking, amphetamines with this or stacking certain compounds with this can be very problematic above and beyond just like basic dietary changes. So anyways, that's it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Have you ever used selegiline before? What was your experience? What kind of nootropics do you guys use? And what is your experience with them? Any and all comments help the algorithm. They're much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplacemordates.com. Follow my Instagram at moreplacemordates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support this channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. Gorilla Mind nootropic formulas, actually notable, is one of the only cognitive enhancing stacks that I take on a really regular basis. This is mainly based around cholinergics, having a high dose of alpha GPC. Huperzine A is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. There are other cognitive enhancing ingredients in the product, dopamine precursors, but have limiting capacities on them due to rate limiting steps that do not let you just haphazardly increase levels. There are still enzymatic processes that are bottlenecked by physiologic, like homeostatic mechanisms to keep things at a high level of function, but not over the top that is going to be problematic. So having a high dose of L-tyrosine in there I really like, and some of the other stuff in there, so it's worthwhile to at least take a look at if it is of interest to you, having like non-stimulant driven, non-long-term monoamine oxidase inhibiting nootropics that are just, like standard, well-accepted modalities that are either could otherwise be gotten through dietary nutrition or whatever, but may otherwise be deficient in the diet. Like sometimes I'm not the best at getting my choline in, although I like to be through my liver intake, eggs, etc., but sometimes not the best, where alpha GPC might come in. So anyways, and my MTHFR polymorphism, so my demands are kind of higher from like a betaine, alpha GPC, a creatine side of things, but I digress. So you can check that out. Oh, and by the way, the pre-workout I mentioned, like the N-Phenethyl dimethylamine citrate, that is the complementary stimulant in Gorilla Mode, as well as Gorilla Mode Energy. If you're interested in that, you can check that out too. Preventive medicine, hormone replacement therapy platform. If you want high quality diagnostics and medical oversight to determine targeted recommendations to optimize your quality of life, vitality, performance, etc. You can check that out, Merrick Health. Anything else I'm associated with, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.